Welcome back to the Healthy with Heartland podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host, also joined with your favorite co-hosts and creative directors, Simon and Shannon. How are we feeling today?
Doing well.
It's another healthy day at Heartland.
How's it going, Heartland fam?
We are cruising into July 4th. It's holiday time. Hope you're doing some grilling, other fun stuff, celebrating America. But yeah, before we get into today's topic, let's get to those announcements.
All right. It's going to be a quick announcement here for you folks. If you have not restocked from home without the hassle, there is still another day left in this month to take advantage of our Nick's Ice Cream reorder special. So you can get 4 pints absolutely free with your reorder. All sorts of amazing flavors from strawberry to coffee caramel. So something for everyone to love. If you do happen to receive your awesome reorder and delivery, make sure to snap a photo of your freezer and your delivery drivers, post it on Facebook and tag Heartland Connect, and you could be entered in to win our $500 raffle giveaway, which we're about to do here next week on Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. And with that, y'all, let's get into today's podcast.
Let's do it. So Justin, you had a great experience going to one of these farms. Did you kind of want to let everybody know what you were doing?
Yeah, so we're always, looking at farms, visiting places, learning about the process and seeing how we can make things better. Specifically on this trip, the farm that I visited was the very front end of the supply chain as far as how cattle are bred. And then this is before we even raise cattle that we eat, which are steers, castrated males. So it's one thing a lot of people probably don't realize is that when we eat steaks, when we buy, beef, we are buying steers, which are castrated males. We're not eating heifers. Usually, they are used to breed and create more heifers for breeding, and then the males or steers are what's moved for food production. So what I was seeing was the very front end of that. This family farm, what they do is they breed cattle. So there's a lot that goes, we talk about genetics a lot, quality starts with the breed of the animal, and they were breeding Black Angus cattle, and it's all done through artificial insemination at this point. So you've got a herd. They had about 40 head of Angus heifers, which are females, and they have one bull on the farm. Just in case the artificial insemination doesn't work, they have a backup. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah. But there's all types of lineages and bloodlines, and the most prized semen from these Black Angus cows that they know are going to marble extremely well. That's what they use to basically breed more cattle. So it was very cool to see that experience. There were a bunch of young calves, and they come out in the morning, and they've got a bunch of hay lined up, and they have what's called breakfast. So all of them have their hay breakfast. And it's interesting that they know what their routine is, and then once they're done eating, they ride right out to a pasture, and they hang out there all day, just grazing, hanging out in the shade, walking around, and they're very pack oriented. They all hang out together. And this particular farm, they had about 30 acres to roam around for 40 head of cattle. So it's a great experience to see the front end of that. And the males that they breed will be sold to other family farmers where their specialty is to actually raise the cattle to move to harvest.
Wow.
That's super interesting. That's pretty awesome though. And I guess the feed, you said it was hay. I guess is that what they're growing on the farm itself, and then they're essentially chopping that and then feeding that to the cattle?
Yeah, everything's regenerative. It's very interesting. So they have the one pasture on the left that is very hilly, so they can't grow anything on it. So they use that pasture for the animals to roam around. Oh. And on the second pasture next to it that's fenced off, this year they're raising corn. Oh. And next year they'll raise soybeans. And the year after that, it'll be a different crop. So they rotate the land that way because the nutrients from the corn that they grow will help grow the soybeans next year. And then there's nitrogen left over from different things that you plant, and it keeps the soil fertile. And the interesting thing, after they harvest all this corn, they're going to let all those cows go into that pasture and kind of clean up the bottom. You know, the cows will eat some of that the corn husks and things that are left around. So the whole ecosystem of how they use the farm is amazing to see.
Oh,
Oh, that's cool. So they're utilizing the leftovers in that way, and it's like a little treat for the cows.
yeah.
That's cool.
They love it.
That's awesome.
Little
Yep.
kins.
And again, this is on the front end. This is the breeding side of things.
Right.
Right.
Wow. Super cool. Because we do talk about, you know, I mean, the genetics and stuff, but it's interesting kind of diving into the difference between, you know, the bulls and the steers and the heifers. And even too, like, I remember in just first kind of learning about that, there's like a first time heifer, there's like a second time, there's like so many different layers to it. And I think it's really interesting, the background, and like you said, kind of like the forefront, like the stuff that comes before the actual harvesting and processing and growing. And it's fun, like to see the little cows, right? Like the birth, it's the circle of life. So that's cool.
Yeah, and they, you know, these are family farmers. This is their business. They love the animals. They had Aussie shepherds running around herding them. So it's great to see. But from the business perspective, you know, a cow that does not produce calves is basically becomes a liability to them. So
Right.
they will breed the animals, and then this is interesting to know the difference of buying from us versus if you're in the commercial supply chain. When these animals don't produce babies anymore, they have to sell them and bring in new calves. So that might be at 5 years old, 10 years old for that steer. And then they're sold to the commodity supply chain, and they're usually harvested and used for lower end ground beef and things like that. So just knowing that what you're getting from us is a completely different care and quality than what's eventually essentially used up. Either breeding cows, dairy cows, all this stuff is going to the commercial supply chain when the quality farmers are done with them. So it's very interesting to see how that ecosystem works.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I guess basically you're saying that the farm that you went to is more interested in breeding the animals, and then they're moving them, as far as like, you know, they're not really, are they raising the beef there as well? The beeves, I should say, sorry.
No, so all that they do is they are experts in quality genetics and creating very high quality Black Angus thoroughbred, very well marbled. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. Like the neck hump on their back has to be less than 2 inches.
Right.
There's all kinds of things that qualify for when they go to sell their steers to other farmers. You know, they're going to get paid based off the quality of the product. So you know, how much they invest in the genetics and the process there really correlates to, you know, if they're going to make money or not. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, and then you talk about like the expertise required, like you said, like the hump and like how that needs to be measured. And I know there's something about like the horizontal lines and like the sheen of the coat, and like, you know, if it's like really smooth versus it having like kind of like furry like tufts and things like that. I just, so again, like we always talk about like knowing the questions to ask. That's like a whole field of like that knowledge is just, it's really cool. And how you said it's like passed down from generation to generation because it's within their family.
Well, and it's all in the breeding too, because you mentioned, you know, the marbling aspect as well, right? When they can, you know, after they process the animal and they see, oh wow, this one was really well marbled, they'll use those same genetics to then breed. You know what I mean? You can essentially breed out things as well and breed in those good quality, you know, marbling and that kind of stuff as well.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And too, like just the different, it's just a different like aspect. Like we talk a lot about like the eating experience, but it's important too. Like in order to get those quality genetics, you do have to have those farms and those families that are doing this breeding process, right? And this is across all areas. So they're doing it for pork, they're doing it for beef, you know, all those kind of things. So it's very interesting and very cool. It's another cool aspect of farming that I feel like we get to research into and learn about.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. They use everything, right? So part of having those cows they were talking about out in the pasture is when they manure in their hooves and the land and how it regenerates. And then where all those calves come out and eat their breakfast in that line of hay, all the manure that falls there is collected and used as fertilizer on the other side of the farm for all the plants that they're going to grow and the different crops and species. So it's just great to see how a real regenerative farm works.
Right.
It's awesome.
And I mean, that's the beauty of the regenerative farm, is that you're not letting anything go to waste.
Yeah.
Right. And you're using all the natural aspects of farming as it should be.
Absolutely.
And you're using those back into it. That's, I mean, you know, that's a beautiful thing.
Nothing goes to waste,
Yeah.
but you're almost leaving it like better than you found it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and for me, you know, every time I get my delivery or I'm gonna make dinner, I get to feel fantastic about the family farmers that we're supporting. I mean,
Right.
that's just the best part about it. I mean, that's without them, we don't have food in this country, and
Mhm.
they're on tight margins. You know,
Yep.
they need us to support them. So
Yep.
that's the biggest thing for me with
Yeah.
this whole process. It's just not only are you supporting people who do it the right way, but you're also sustaining their livelihoods as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great, you know, you mentioned a great topic there, because that's kind of a segue into, you know, like the topic that we were going to speak about today is, you know, supporting the people that are doing it the right way. Because right now, I think the Wall Street Journal just came out with an article where Smithfield, one of the largest pork producers, I think they have over 45 plants
It's definitely the largest in the U.S.
in the U.S.
But what's interesting is the WH Group, who owns it, is actually the largest pork purveyor, like the largest pork company in the entire world.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're tied to
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're out of China, right?
They're Hong Kong based, but it's a
It's a
Chinese-based
Chinese-based
company. Yeah.
But basically in California, because they just passed the Proposition 12.
Well, they passed that, I think, back in 2018, but it was
2022 it went into
it was
effect.
going into effect. Yeah,
Right, right.
2022.
So it just went into effect.
So they're feeling the pressures of what that kind of entailed.
Right. And I guess right now with the climate of everything that's kind of going on, you know, when you mention supporting people that are doing it the right way, I think a lot of these, you know, larger kind of based companies that do have, I mean, a lot of, like, if Smithfield goes out of business, or they take their business out of California, a lot of those factory farms that were producing the pigs, giving it to them, will probably also go out of business as well.
Yeah, what's crazy is they're saying that, I mean, obviously California has a huge population, but that they actually consume about 15% of
It's huge.
pork in the United States, in the U.S. So yes,
Right.
that would be a huge, you know, a huge change to the pork industry
Right.
in general. And I mean, just to kind of circle back and talk a little bit about what Proposition 12 actually was. So it's known as the Farm Animal Confinement Initiative. So specifically, more specifically, it talked about prohibiting the sale of eggs, veal, or pork that had been confined in a cruel manner as defined by policy. So being raised with not like any space or not enough space as what they qualified. And they deemed it to be at least 24 square feet of space per pig is what they were requiring.
Right.
And so, like, I think 96% of like the conventional raised pork now in California didn't qualify. Only 4% did as of, you know, before 2020.
Yeah. And then if it's 2023, I guess that's when Smithfield says they'll be out, and they'll be, and I guess that's kind of the question that I have for you guys today that we can kind of talk about. So we talked about, you know, essentially supporting people doing it the right way, but do you guys feel that it's necessary for the government to then step in and say, hey, this is a requirement state by state by state? Or do you think, you know, the market should sort of dictate that? What are your guys' opinions on that?
That's a great question.
Right.
In this case, I think the consumer is so blind to how their food ends up on the shelf that somebody, whether it's the government or us spreading the word, whatever it is, has to step in and say, this is not okay. So I think it's great. I'm not a huge fan of big government, but in this scenario, it's actually awesome to see them actually doing something good.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and they said too in the article that it's up to all of us, like the farmers, the retailers, and the consumers, like everyone as a whole, to support it, because at the end of the day, it's about, you know, just treating the animals with the respect that they deserve. So,
and to give this some context, what we're talking about is getting rid of gestation crates, essentially, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, they want 24 square feet of space per pig.
And their, I guess, Smithfield's argument was that, I guess, the infrastructure that they have already built is going to cost them way too much money to be able to
Millions of dollars.
Yeah, way too much money to be able to, you know, give that amount of room and give that space to the actual, you know, take out those gestation crates.
Yeah.
So their whole thing is, you know, they want to try and keep the cost of the food super low. But I guess that's the other side of you know, this topic is, you know, cutting those corners and doing those things a certain type of way with the way the conventional farms are doing them to keep the cost down. Is that really what, you know what I mean, as a society, as the U.S., as the world, you want to have? Do you want to have, you know what I mean? I guess that kind of is dictated by the people that are purchasing it, right?
Well, essentially, in researching this, what I got from the people who were trying to explain, you know, what was going on is that that's what the people like voted for, essentially. Like that's what the people wanted. So
that's what was kind of exciting for me.
Yeah.
Was because at least I know it's probably a hard transition, and you know people are going to lose jobs, and you know what I mean. There's going to be
actually Smithfield, specifically the one that's closing in Vernon, California. They said that they were giving the opportunity to all their people to relocate to other spaces because they have a lot of other facilities in the Midwest. Like again, they're the largest in the United States. So, but in that community, they were talking about the impact that it would have on, you know, the community itself. And what they're hoping is that another, you know, pork purveyor will come in and take that facility, but they're not, you know, they're not sure because of the rising costs and already the inflation and things that are going on top of the proposition.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they should have done it right to begin with, you know.
Yeah.
So adapt, pivot. It's unfortunate that the government had to force you to have some ethics, you know.
Right.
It would have been great if you just invested in that on your own, made that part of your marketing campaign, made people feel great about your product. I mean, it's just not a good look when the government has to step in and says, hey, we're not going to let you torture animals anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I was kind of, you know, at the same time, because I'm kind of on the same line as you, Justin, where I don't know if, you know, government should be, you know, like literally telling us, you know, oh, you have to be doing this or that. But I think there is a line that has to be drawn at a certain point where now that they're involved, I think that it's great that people, I mean, they had to vote for this.
Yeah,
California had to essentially, support it and vote for it, which means I feel like consumers are now, you know, they are dictating the market because now, you know, the government has stepped in and said, hey, this is what's going to happen. And the big thing about the California Proposition 12 is that they're also saying any of the meat that's being shipped into California.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. So if you're not following those regulations and you decide to pick up your company and move it to Illinois, you then can't sell your pork in California because it has to be under that regulation, which, again, you know, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, their argument is that affordability is not going to be possible anymore, and that's their main argument. But then if it's the people who are wanting it, I mean, I think that, I don't know if like for the majority, but I would say that a certain amount of people would say that they'd be okay with paying more if they knew that it meant that it was raised the right way. And then I guess that's the hope.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, or does Smithfield just take a little bit less profit margin? I mean,
and that's what I mean is like, it's not like they need to evaluate and redo their facilities over and over and over again. You need to put in the money for the infrastructure, redo it one time, and then you're good to go.
That argument would be like, you know, Heartland, like, we need to get our valuation up. We're going to cut our quality and keep prices the same. So, you know, like, so that we can make more money. Like, we don't do that. We're on razor thin margins with this quality of food, you know, but that's the ethics and the mission is more important than the corporate greed. So, I mean, they can say that all day, but it's just not true.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just, again, I love the fact that it's happening, and I know that there's going to be growing pains with it, but I think that I hope that other states will follow suit, maybe not in the regulation, but
they're talking about, I think Massachusetts is thinking about it.
Okay.
There was a couple other states that were considering it just because of, you know, what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the pork. It's also about chickens as well. It's like the laying hens.
Yeah. Yep. And veal as well.
And
so
veal as well.
cows, gestation.
And I think that California is saying, I guess that by 2023 or something, that it, like all of the hens that are laying eggs in California are going to have to be, you know, essentially cage free and actually not just cage free, because they realized when they said cage free that then people were just, you know, putting them, you know,
in a large house.
In a large house. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they actually have they have to be able to roam and do those kind of things. So, you know, in terms of animal welfare, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. It's hard to like decipher between, if you're reading all the articles and the information, a lot of the stuff coming from like the pork processors and Smithfield themselves is kind of like what we said. It's all about, you know, profit and money and things like that. So it's unfortunate.
And mind you, if you've seen these farms that have, you know, the pigs in the gestation crates and those kind of things. Like,
I didn't want to get too graphic, but they were talking about just like how there was like 200, there could be up to 2,000 in each house, and then it's like 200,000 pigs in like one quote unquote farm, but they're just in these houses with slatted floors, and all their feces and urine goes through the slatted floors and then runs into this like cesspool, which is like miles and miles long, and it's affecting like people in the population who live within, you know, miles of the plant, and just like the devastation in terms of the environment and the impact that it's having on the animals. And it's like, why wouldn't you support, you know, the change of that, the evolution of that?
Right.
Well, think about all the waste, right? Like that's being sent through the slats is supposed to feed the pasture.
Yeah.
Like that's supposed to fall into the ground, feed microbes, bugs, worms, regenerate grasslands. Like the animals are giving back to the earth, and then they're eating from the earth. We're eating them. Like the system, and on the humane side, if you like last on Monday when I was at this farm, the cows move in packs. They love to be social and hang out.
Yeah,
they're licking each other, cleaning each other. The pigs are the same way.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like, so to keep them confined to gestation crates, it's just insanely stressful and against their nature. I mean, that's like keeping your dog in a crate its whole life.
Exactly. No,
they're smart too. They talk about how they actually develop like mental issues. Like they'll like sway back and forth, like gnaw and bite on the bars, because like you said, they're social like animals with like habits. And if they're not able to express their, you know, their personality, their pigness, as Joel Salatin would say, then like they go like crazy. It's really sad. Yeah. And they're in such a small crate, and it takes 4 months for a pig to go through gestation. And they basically like, they can't turn around or move side to side. They're standing just like straight facing, looking in the same direction for 4 months. And they just, they impregnate them over and over and over again until, like Justin said, they no longer, you know, are viable. And then, you know, that's kind of it. So it's really sad. But I think that this was, although it's, you know, a lot of information, it is a step in the right direction, a trend for the right direction. Yeah.
But in reading the article, this is just my personal opinion. In reading the article, I felt like they went more with, I feel like a lot of times animal welfare and these issues get put into a certain group of like where people try to, you know, create a political agenda on it, where it's like, you know, like again, the food we eat and you know, the animal welfare should be the top part of it, where this became about, you know, like businesses and the business climate in kind of California and that whole kind of thing, where it's like, you know, let's talk about the animals. Let's talk about the welfare of the food that we're eating and what we're feeding.
And how about it's better for us? How about that?
100%. That's why I'm all for it. You know,
like it's like, oh, I'm against it, and I'm against what's better for me. You know, but we'll learn. We'll get there.
You know, interesting thought I just had about the age thing you were just talking about. You know, one thing I learned that I didn't fully understand was that how the age of an animal changes the color of the product. Mm-hmm. And that's why chickens are so light in color, is because we harvest them at
so young,
40-ish days. You know, a pig lives longer, it's a little darker, and then cows are being harvested around the 24 to 30 month range. You know, so they're actually, to give you perspective, the food you eat, like that's how long these animals live for, which is sad. But you know, the older they get, the more deteriorated the quality will be. So.
Right. Yep.
And when you think, you know, because certain people, you know, they have an issue with killing animals and that kind of thing, but I feel like it's the circle of life. If they're raised in that right, humane way, and they're able to do that, they're raised for a certain purpose. They're raised as food. Like,
I mean, if you are going to choose to, you know, eat and enjoy animals, then you might as well make sure that it's being done the right way, because it's better for them, it's better for the environment, it's better for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm for it.
And that's like the quote we talk about all the time, right? An animal should only have one bad day.
Mm-hmm.
One bad day.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And if that's the case, I'm okay with it.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I mean, better for us, better for you know, kids, better for the world.
Yep.
It's a good product. So.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So yeah, big change going on.
Excited to see what happens.
Yeah, maybe we do another podcast where we update what's been going on, because it was it's not going to go in. Well, it's in effect already, but they're not going to be moving out of California until 2023. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot more information and progress on, you know, this story and this topic.
Yeah, I think the headline was, "Is California going to have a bacon shortage?"
Right.
That's good marketing.
Well, so here's the question. Does it say, I mean, so Smithfield basically taking the stance of we're not going to change, we're just going to move?
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Vote with your dollars, folks.
Yep.
And you think, and I was like, okay, so they move out, they can still, you know, produce the same amount of pork. But I guess what they're saying is not only are we moving out, but we're not going to produce pork for California.
Correct. Yeah.
Because if you're not following the
they have
guidelines,
like a separate brand called like Farmer John or something like that.
I think they actually did the hot dogs at Dodger Stadium.
Yes. And they said that brand is going to continue to, I guess, provide for Californians, but I don't know. Like we mentioned, it's going to have to abide by the Proposition 12 guidelines if they're going to be able to, you know, sell it there. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
Yep.
It's going to be very interesting.
And so it's exciting for the pork farms that are doing it the right way.
Right.
They may have, you know what I mean? They may
more
have
opportunity.
Opportunity, exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
Yep. Awesome. This is definitely the trend. You know, people care.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to shift that way, which is great to see, because it's been, you know, a long time where people just, they go to the store, they just have blind trust.
Yep.
They don't even think it through. And these are the same people that are going to have insane ethics and missions and the things that are on their radar, and then go buy, you know, Smithfield products. So it's very positive for the future.
Yep. Yeah. We're so disconnected from like our food supply. That's why I think it's so cool. Like how you're saying, you know, when you go to the farm and you see, you know, like the new life and you see the circle of life, because that's, you know, that's an important, even if you don't experience it for yourself, to understand that, you know, topic, and the farmers and the ranchers and the people who are, you know, doing that, you know, that hard work and, you know, that actual, you know, that processing and stuff. It's not easy, but, you know, we need to eat and people need to have food available. And so they're doing that job. And, you know, that's super important to recognize.
And this is a total sidebar topic, but Justin, when you went to the farm, was there a different sort of like feeling, like energy when you're out there and you were seeing that, you know, like the ecosystem was working in harmony? Like, did you?
First of all, it was a beautiful day. It was 72 degrees.
Wow.
There was no humidity.
Oh.
There was not a cloud in the sky. And yeah, it was awesome. We were at the top of the hill where the cattle normally graze.
Right.
And we're looking out in the cornfield where they're raising all this corn. And there was a buck running, like huge horns, just like running through the cornfield. It would like disappear and then pop up and disappear and pop up. So cool. There's just so much life and so many things going on.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's great to see, you know, and you can just tell, you know, these cows are very happy. They're enjoying themselves. They're in a great environment. They're being taken care of by a wonderful family. And, you know, it's great to just know that that's where your food comes from.
Absolutely. Good vibes only.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I think that, you know, like for me, that's even the next level. So of course you want to eat things that are good for you and that kind of thing, but then seeing that ecosystem.
Oh yeah, experiencing it. And I can't imagine, you know, that family like raising their own food and then being able to provide it, you know.
And it's hard, you know, not just hard work because you're lifting heavy things, but it's also like you have to be in tune with like the weather and the different storms that are coming. And you know what I mean? Like they're not your pets per se, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's almost, you know, it's part of your family. Like you have to take care of them and you have to do those things, especially if you're, you know what I mean? You're mentioning like these, you know, these families that are doing it themselves. And it's not just like a, you know, a community supported, just agriculture, like those huge CAFOs, you know what I mean? Like it's actual families that are doing this.
Right.
Their kids are experiencing it. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. Every single one of their kids, they bought them a cow. So they all have their own cow.
That's cool.
And, you know, they're all tagged on their ears, so they know what year that they got them, how old they are, which cow's which. I mean, it's a very intimate thing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's great.
It's really cool. Well, it's good stuff.
Yep.
I think we're gonna have to do an update on what's gonna happen in the pork industry on the West Coast, but maybe we'll do that later on.
And I think
could be a big shift.
Yeah.
Could be.
That's what I'm saying.
Hopefully.
Yep. And I hope that
Hopefully
it goes.
Good news.
It's not just the pork. I hope that it starts to affect all the different industries. And you know, like again, if you have to pay a little bit more for your food and it's grown the right way, like,
yeah, it's gonna be, you know, something that we're all gonna have to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it a learning experience? I feel like we're going back in time.
Yeah, back in time to the way
reversing the industrial
that it used to
agriculture.
be.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's true. It sounds like cliche, but it's very true. So, good stuff.
You heard it here first.
Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in today. We're going to be back again next week on Thursday, so make sure to tune in for that. And Justin, unless you have anything else, you can go ahead and wrap us up.
All right. Well, enjoy your July 4th weekend and week coming up.
Absolutely.
Eat lots of certified humane products, and we'll be back next week. And as always, stay healthy with Heartland.